Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Lakshman Nathan. Laksh is the Chief Information Officer of Paramount, a nearly $30 billion revenue company that's one of the world's leading producers of premium entertainment content that connects billions of people in nearly every country in the world. In his role, he owns all corporate systems, most application systems that support the enterprise, all end-user technology, and specialized production teams. He's been in his current role for a bit more than a year, and he joined Paramount through the merger of CBS, where he'd previously worked for 13 plus years, and Viacom. He's led a cloud-first push at the organization, and he recognized that the merger, together with COVID, served as catalyst for remarkable transformation that he has led. I look forward to getting his perspective on all the above and more through this conversation. Laksh Nathan, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this conversation. Why don't we begin, if you don't mind, Laksh, with your business? You are the Chief Information Officer of Paramount. Most people who'd be listening or watching this would certainly have some familiarity with the business. But why don't you provide a bit more of an overview of the business that Paramount's in?
Sure. So Paramount is a large media entertainment company. I think most people have heard of that at least from a Paramount film perspective. But what's interesting about Paramount is that we have so many different brands underneath the umbrella of Paramount. We have CBS, the broadcasting network. We have Paramount Films. We have a lot of choices across the cable networks that range from Comedy Central, MTV, VH1, BET. And as a company, we broadcast, we stream, which is probably our biggest initiative right now is to be a strong streaming partner, right, with Paramount Plus as our flagship app, as well as Pluto TV. So across the board, like with Paramount, we're a pretty diverse business organization, and I think it always comes up with a lot of series of fun and interesting areas of growth, even as a Chief Information Officer for the company.
Very interesting. And take a moment, if you would, Laksh, to talk a bit more about what's within your purview as CIO.
Sure. As Chief Information Officer, I kind of think of my area as 4 different pillars. The first pillar is truly the corporate systems, that is your finance, your HR, legal, corporate comms, very much what a traditional Chief Information Officer would support. The second pillar is really around our revenue areas and the systems that support it. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of different brands, but there's also a lot of different ways that Paramount essentially makes money. We make money off our ad sales business. We have an affiliate revenue solution where we work with a lot of our owned and operated stations across the network who air our content out there. We have theatrical revenue. We have participations, residuals, type of residuals that come across the area here. So just as you can imagine, with just like the number of revenue systems, we have technology that supports each one of those areas, and that falls into my purview. The third pillar is really all of the end user technology, and that encompasses everything from the service desk, the desktop engineering and client service teams, all the way to the identity, the collaboration solutions, email, and even Zoom, which we're using today. And then the fourth pillar is really probably a unique thing for a Chief Information Officer, is that I've got a group of folks who support the production services across many of our CBS and corporate landscapes. And what I mean by that is literally we have CBS News, we have CBS Sports. I have folks who actually go out to the NFL games and help support the IT and technology in those areas. And then I have also teams that help with a lot of the syndication business across CBS. Underneath the 4 pillars, I have a design team where I have development, I have a PMO team, I've got a data team, and a platform automation team that really specializes in hyper automation, AI, RPA, all the things that are keeping the company stitched together.
And it's roughly a little more than a year that you've been in this role. If I did my math correct, via CBS and a couple of stints at sort of operating company or business unit level roles, another 13 plus as well. Can Can you talk a bit about the process of going from, within a portion of the organization to now global roles and the interaction between the two?
No, I've had quite a journey at Paramount. In 2009, I did start off in the program management office, and then I quickly, I think someone realized I have an aptitude for applications as well. So I moved out of the PMO in the first 6 months and started becoming an application director really fast. Um, and at the time, it was at CBS, prior to the merger of CBS and Viacom, which is now Paramount. And so, starting in what I guess you consider traditional technology with like ERP systems, in that first foray of my first year or two, I had the honor and pleasure of like actually working with every different business unit for various different projects. We were implementing new systems like payroll and various finance systems, where I actually got to meet with understanding different groups that were like I mentioned earlier, like CBS Sports and CBS News. And what was really interesting is that every group is its own business. It really was a very diversified portfolio. And on one angle, I was learning about publishing from Simon Schuster, and another angle from some of our studio operations. And so I think in the first couple of years, a lot of it was about building relationships, learning the business. I did not have a traditional background in media when I first started in 2009, but I learned very quickly. And I think a lot of it was thanks to the different projects that we were doing at CBS at the time. And so over the years, I think like just naturally happened is as I got through, larger and larger projects and rollouts, I started just inheriting more and more services. Like throughout the years, I inherited like the end user technology areas, the collaboration tools. At one point, like with all of because I was doing so many business application support and learning the businesses, I started having individual CIO, like we were divisional CIO based back in the day. So as we were growing and really investing more in enterprise solutions across the board, I started inheriting even the local CIOs who were supporting various business applications like at Showtime and Simon Schuster. I think I definitely had I'll call it a very diverse set of projects and initiatives throughout, prior to the merger. I'll tell you when the merger happened a couple, I'd say about 2 or 3 years ago, that was when CBS and Viacom came together as one company. At the time, we formed under Viacom CBS as the management company. And I'd have to say that was probably one of the most unique situations for me, because I've done divestitures, I've done M&A, but at a much smaller level, like we would be selling off smaller companies. But this was like two major companies coming together and culturally, trying to figure out what is our story. CBS was many different companies. Viacom and Paramount had a different culture altogether. And what I would say is that when the management companies came together, and I was basically anointed the head of enterprise solutions for the whole company. I think that's where I feel like all the work I've done in the past, where having, bringing teams together, bringing cultures together, learning from both sides of it, not just coming in saying I'm CBS and having one mentality associated to it, was definitely not something that happened. I actually think I learned more from the transition of the team members across the board. And then since then, my role definitely jumped more into transformation, and we really focused on the fact that we were bringing a company under like single system. So my last 3-4 years, honestly, has been all about transformation, and both not just on the technology perspective, but I'd also say even just organizationally within my own org as well as my business partners. And we got through a lot of transformation already, but we still have a lot still left over in our world. But I do feel like from a team perspective, like we've been, I forget which company my team members are from, Legacy at this point. That's how much we've merged together. So
that seems like a good thing that they're coalescing to a degree where that becomes less relevant.
Yes, it definitely
very,
is.
Very interesting, and I can see the advantages of the way in which you grew through your career, how it lends itself nicely to having that empathy for the various parts and pieces that have come together in recent years, and now with your kind of umbrella of responsibilities across the organization, breathing life into that. I want to return to the four pillars that you noted as areas of responsibility. Is the way in which your team is organized aligned with the four pillars? In other words, do you have sort of teams that are associated with each of those? It sounded like there was enough difference in terms of how those operated that would be the case. Please explain if you would.
I would say that there's a little bit of a couple people in each pillar. Let's just say it that way. So, for instance, on the ERP side of the house, I have one person who supports all of ERP and the systems associated to that. Then I have another leader who supports like all of the legal systems and various other marketing systems. And it's more about having those individuals at the corporate level being both the application owners as well as relationship managers for the group. So I know in some cases you've probably seen like local CIOs. I'm a big believer of having the technology leader both be the subject matter expert as well as the relationship manager, because it feels like they get a lot more out of the tools themselves. What I would also tell you is that from the other areas, so from our revenue area, because of all the different work streams, the revenue streams that we have associated, I have specialists who oversee ad sales. I have a specialist who oversees affiliates, and I have definitely someone who supports all of the theatrical and content licensing that's associated to it. On the end user technology, I have a little bit of a different take on the end user technology. I really do have like sort of a nice breakdown of one leader who supports all my operations day to day across, your client services, desktop engineering. They still do a lot of unique things to improve SLAs and evaluate how let's just say how can we do things better. And then on the other side of it, from an end user technology, I really have a thought leader who really goes out and looks at the newer technologies. And how do we tie the more advances of things like Zoom and like and Slack and Salesforce. How do we get these things to even like do more than what they promise from a vendor perspective? And we always come up with very creative solutions to support it. From the production side of the house, I really do have like one leader who is my sole relationship with those production areas, and who has knowledge both on the application side as well as the actual production media business. So I probably have an eclectic group of individuals who have both the relationship and the development piece associated to these areas.
And can you talk a bit about some of the skills that are on the rise in terms of importance, Laksh, as you think about the evolution of the business and areas in which it's getting into? You talked about some of the trends associated with it, even as a broader business into streaming and clearly sort of more advanced technologies and so forth. How does that flow through some of the needs your team have? And how do you think about the combination of bringing in people with those skills already versus training those who are there for the skills of tomorrow?
So what's interesting is that I feel like if you asked me this 10 years ago, I would have always gone with the mentality of there's a business analyst who does requirements and helps with defining QA portions of it, and then you have the engineers and developers. I think what's really interesting is that in last 5, maybe 6 years, with the onset of software as a service, you're getting a much more different mentality in technology. And when we merged together, one of the biggest things was what was going to be our technology stack and how are we, pushing forward on it. And one of the things that we definitely, like many companies, say is that we're cloud first. And the reason we went down that path is because we wanted to leverage the more modern cloud technologies, either using our partners like AWS and Google, or if it's a software as a service, that we don't have to worry about like the infrastructure, but we have the ability to stay within a box and configure systems. So I'd say at the time of the merger, I really did a much more of a focused look at some of our business analysts and how they could become even more technical and how they can own configuration within these software as a service solutions. In the same sense, my engineers and developers continue to make advances on some of these more modern technologies, but they too have like a strong configuration background. So one of the things that I see at least as foundational is that the tools of today make it actually easier for technologists to become faster in terms of enabling this. So the talent, what I've been a big fan of is being training in-house within our resources, and how do we grow those individuals. And so I found that, like, with business people who are business analysts who know a business area, we've started to develop their skill sets with using more low code, no code type of areas. We found that solutions like Salesforce, particularly, and Automation Anywhere, like RPA type of tools, were really interesting areas where I can quickly grow those people's skill sets. They could turn solutions around pretty fast. And like, I think that the onset of the low code, no code has definitely been like a game changer for my organization. Because traditional tech has always been, you always have that struggle in traditional tech, is like when people want to build something, you might hear that it takes like 5 or 6 months to build. I think one of the things that has been great about some of these solutions is that I have a set of subject matter experts who turn solutions around relatively quickly in like 2 months, even depending on the amount of testing. But what we've actually done is gone one step further, is started training our business users to actually support some of these solutions themselves. And by doing that, it's sort of like, I would call it kind of defeats that whole shadow IT kind of concept. We're almost embracing the shadow IT because we can only scale that much as a tech team, right? So we've made investments in also making that our subject matter experts can be more like teachers, build the solutions, build it with the users, train them, and then actually have them support their own solutions. And that's something we also did in our first couple of years of the merger, because I felt like that brought joy to I think our business users felt like freedom once they knew the guidelines and they knew how to support their solution, but they still had tech to come in and work with them to say, like, if something goes wrong. But there was guidelines and post, so that so people aren't going too crazy with these type of solutions.
Fascinating. And I'm curious also, Laksh, to what extent was the merger a catalyst in driving the cloud first adoption? I ask because during a major merger like that, there will be an expectation that change is coming, and therefore it can be an opportunity, frankly, to rethink the way things are done, even if it's not employing the practices of one or another. Let's choose a third way that is the more modern way. Was that indeed a catalyst for maybe a faster pace of change, or
Absolutely.
a broader logic as to why that should be the case?
Well, I'll give you two. There's two things that were the accelerators. And I'm sure you hear this one a lot. Is yes, a merger always is like a good way of re-rationalizing things. I think we found that not only it wasn't even like technology that had to say you need to go rationalize. It was like the business units came in and said, "Hey, I have 7 ad sales systems. How do we get to like at least two?" They can't always go to one, but like, how do you get to that? That was definitely the premise from not just from our businesses at the beginning of the merger. What's also interesting is 4 months later, when we merged, COVID hit. So we were still in the middle of like figuring out like, how do we were on different email systems, we were on various different tools. And as a media company, what we have is like, we had COVID hit us at the same time as the merger. And I would say that ultimately like sped up anything end user technology, like went super fast. We made investments with like Zoom, we worked with Slack, we worked with Microsoft. We had all of our partners lined up in a nice approach. And I think once people had to work from home and they realized they needed these collaboration tools and they needed these video conferencing solutions to work, everyone basically, like embrace the fact that we were trying to roll out some pretty, and the technology was working and it was simple. And so I think part of the challenge we had in the first 2 years right after that was we continued on our transformation programs, but as a technology organization, we supported both our, what you call your typical end users, who would normally be your office workers, but then on the production side, our production teams had to do, I can't give them enough credit for the amount of level of efforts that they had to go leaps and bounds, where like we had production buildings that were like staffed to like a third or less than that in the early days, and having people film from like their locations. Like Stephen Colbert, for instance, did his whole show from his home. And so you can never give enough credit for all of these production service teams who went out and came up with some very creative solutions across the board. We looked at new technologies and how we were doing our editing, and supporting people who used to being very like wired into the building. And like we went from people going into our broadcast centers that physically the computers locked, loaded, connected to the building, VPN, and then the next day all of a sudden everyone's like, okay, let's figure out our VPN. Let's these same people who had never been VPN'd into it got, started using all the cloud technologies and locking it in. So I would tell you that like from an end user technology, we definitely got in even within our first year, everyone up, onto our modern technology. And it also helped with some of our, merging of systems on the end user side. And that actually helped accelerate some of our business transformations because a lot of these folks saw that they didn't need to be in our physical locations anymore. And I think they were more adaptable. That helped lead to being more accepting of more of these software as a service solutions. So I hate to say an event like COVID, no one ever wants a situation like COVID, but I think we took advantage of the fact that we were in a transformation. We needed to change really fast, and that was the second accelerant to make sure that we moved fast on things.
I can also see you made the point earlier, Laksh, that naturally when the companies came together, there was the initial feeling of kind of where each person, team, division came from, needless to say. And now in a relatively short amount of time, you have the feeling at least that people have melded together. I find that's really extraordinary given the fact that all of that happened during COVID and you didn't have the advantage of proximity in many cases to facilitate people literally coming together in order to perhaps tear down some of the walls that would naturally be there from the different parts of the prior organizations that they came from. What do you see as some of the factors that facilitated that change despite that disadvantage?
I actually think I'll jokingly say the Zoom boxes make everything a very equal playing ground for folks. So when we were a global company, so we have folks who are in LA, New York, and we have London, various other locations. And what I found starting with my own leadership team was the fact that we were conscious of time zones, we were conscious of when we would meet, and I think everyone understood, at least when pre-COVID, when everyone's like locked in a conference room and you can't see everyone's faces, that I think that actually causes some more issues that you can't overcome unless you go visit each other. But I think having the Zoom boxes and being everyone in their own little world made it a much more equal plane. I think that was huge. I did think that because we had common goals on transformation, I think that actually helped with bringing people together. Part of it was people had to learn what the other side was doing. So if I didn't know what the Viacom process and I'm a CBS person or vice versa, those I won't underscore it. It's like that's the hard part of a transformation, right? Like how do you get people to listen to each other and be open to it? And we found that like there was definitely middle ground solutions. There were definitely common solutions. I don't want to name all the common vendors out there, but we did find commonality in how we philosophically use certain vendors. And I think that bridged the gap for a lot. And I think like once people realized I think one of the important things we also did as the merger wasn't like, we just didn't say we're going one company versus the other. We took a really thoughtful approach on each one of our business areas and solutions and said, let's go through the strengths and weaknesses. Does it fit our cloud first mentality? Do you need VPN? I mean, like some basic stuff that we went through. And I think people realized once they started having the commonality across these board and like it wasn't necessarily that we were just picking, one company over the other. I think that made a huge difference culturally for many of us. So I think that was probably one of the secret pieces of it.
Very interesting reflections there. I appreciate that, Laksh. Also wanted to ask you, as you look to the future, what are some trends that particularly excite you? Technology, business, otherwise? What has you excited as you look to the future?
So one of the thing I specifically the normal answer most people say is AI, and definitely that's on my list of things. I think in our world, what's actually really interesting is because of streaming and how we're working across a streaming company versus a traditional broadcast company. When we first started this at CBS, we had CBS All Access back in the day, and it definitely felt like, there was a culture of like the Silicon Valley versus like your traditional tech was the lines were very drawn back in the day. One of the things that I've seen, especially as part of the merger, is that there's definitely our streaming business is obviously one of the an important focus for us, and I think what we're finding is that um, having the partnerships with what you consider corporate IT or traditional tech, and the fact that the newer technologies are what we're embracing. I think we're seeing a partnership where like you're not going off and just developing your own solutions. And I think seeing some of the things that our streaming team has been doing for Paramount Plus and Pluto, and partnering it with some of the evolution that they're doing to grow not just the solutions, but even their own culture and their community. We've been able to, provide. Again, I'm all about like quick solutions. I do like quick solutions because it builds a trust with people. And by showing that we've been agile and we're able to deliver things, and we had some really great solutions where we've leveraged ServiceNow as a community solution, where we help them to start building out like communities where the streaming development communities can start talking to each other and collaborating in a variety way of doing things. I think that cultural piece for us has been exciting, and it's offered up a lot of opportunities for my area so that we could, showcase a lot of our own talent and help with bringing, and again, we're bringing multiple streaming teams together as well too. We're helping with our Paramount Plus team, we're bringing our Pluto team. And I think everyone's been very open-minded about like where we could, provide services and advance, help them with their roadmaps. The other piece, is AI, and I think AI has been definitely, depending on if you think it's hype or whatnot, or if it's the next big thing. I think as a realist with AI, there is definitely some really great solutions that are coming out of here. I think the concept of Copilot, Microsoft has taken Copilot, but like the idea of using AI to Copilot with your work and help with productivity is a game changer, and something that we've been driving towards with software as a service. I think that's been the beginning days of software as a service was the UI should look nice. It should just be easy, right? And now you throw in generative AI where, literally I can like help write my email or I can summarize data. That's a game changer so much for many. And I think it's getting, I think what excites me is in AI, it's two parts. It is one is what are the big vendors going to come out with that enables AI as a co-pilot or a partner with those tools, because I think a lot of people are excited by Microsoft's investments in here, and I think like a lot of I think Google's going to catch up. I think all of these folks are going to catch up, but I think the excitement of the enterprise tools that people are used to all of a sudden getting a almost a facelift to do more and be more productive is very exciting. I do think on the other angle of it is working through our own LM models for very, I'll call it business centric support, back office support, where things like where we could help with our finance groups or help with our legal teams to really, develop, true automation. The other thing about AI is I think AI has been a nice way to showcase tools that we already have in-house. So I don't think it's all about going out and building, not every solution is a generative AI solution. I think a lot of it is really around the idea that, a lot of companies already are doing RPA. That was a big portion of our area. What we found really creative was you can use RPA with generative AI and you can turn something around very quick as opposed to having to build out, your whole LLM model. But I'm happy to go into more detail on that one. But I think that it coming up with the use cases and working with our business partners to figure out what to zone in on them and what would give them the best value. I'm seeing that across all of my technology groups and my compatriots at other companies. I feel like that's our number one conversation is what have you done? What can we share? And like it's offering up a new sense of creativity that I haven't seen in many years.
Talk a bit more, if you wouldn't mind, about that experimentation, Laksh. I think it's really interesting the way you've described that and the methods you're using, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So for instance, like one of the things that we're trying not to use a hammer to solve the problem of every single thing. So if we have a solution, so what we're trying to do is a mentality. Like what we did was we took a two-step part. We definitely did our investigations across all of our our system implementation partners across the board, understand their capabilities, how are they looking at AI and how are they, what are we seeing as commonalities across that? So that was like part one of the education. Part two is really sitting down with our enterprise software providers and really understanding like what they think they're building out. And obviously, you see it fast and furiously on the news every time one of these companies come out, but we've been trying to keep close relationships and be on the early adopters, like such as Microsoft. We're definitely early adopters of Copilot, where we're trying to work through and seeing firsthand what Copilot could actually do for us. But what's been an interesting thing is when everyone comes to us and says, "Oh, I want to use generative AI." I'm like, the thing, the art, I guess, is what I'm trying to figure out, or what we've been working through is how do we consistently kind of educate at the same time the capabilities, but then also dissect what's your use case. And that's been like it's not a one size fits all, but we're trying to develop like a nice formula where I can quickly, train various members within the tech organization. You don't have to be an AI expert, you don't have to be everything, but everyone in my organization should have the foundations across AI, and developing I would say, a quick business requirements and education gathering, because I find that I spend more time actually educating on the capabilities of how to build it, how it costs, what those what are those factors that people should know about. And I think by doing those smaller meetings with a lot of our different executives and business groups, we found that we actually get more of a dialogue on what they end up trying to do. Like, for instance, we've developed a solution literally last week where we ended up talking to our to a certain group and saying, hey, all we're looking to do is we have a bunch of people go out and like have to go extract data out of all of these websites and get transcripts from things. And what they did was, as we talked through the problem, we're like, oh, well, maybe we can use RPA to go out and just do the extraction, since we have the solution already. But then as we dug into it, they were like, oh, but we also want to ask questions. We want to like kind of get some thoughts around it. And from there, we're like, okay, well, we know that our RPA program also connects into our Azure ID. So we can build up our own, leverage, basically ChatGPT 4.0 through Microsoft, and see, can we just summarize the data? And what we're doing is trying to use that example as like, hey, if we build these as like micro solutions and literally show the users how this works, and then we spend like a couple cycles iterating, and then we make this a blessed solution for that business area. So I find that like doing sessions like that is the same approach we've taken with software as a service and low code, no code. I found that the more we can get people into smaller sessions, quickly show them something, and we iterate quickly, people get better educated. I found that 3 years ago, I have more business users who understand the foundations of Microsoft and Salesforce just because they've been in the tools, and they now come to me and ask like, hey, what are we doing at this enhancement? What are we going to do with the features there? So I think that that education of our business users has been like probably critical for like how we're able to continue to expand our services. And it does link into something we're doing as well, is because of all of this education, all of this training across the board. We've also this year developed an approach, and this is before AI was even a big thing. We came up with an approach called a citizen development program to help take what we've done with training business users and actually make it more of a larger enterprise efforts across, and offering it out to the entire company. So it's been sort of a nice journey to get there, but yeah, no, the citizen development is like our way of like really just opening up technology for the rest of the company and giving them opportunities that they never thought that they had capabilities for.
I really like that, Laksh. In a couple of different places in our conversation, you've talked about the ways in which you've elevated the knowledge base of the broader team, so that the kinds of questions that can be asked, the dialogue across the organization is in a higher plane, and therefore the value of those interactions and collaborations can be better as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very fair statement. I mean, one of the things that, because I have to say, because we've trained a lot of our business users. I found that like talking to like just talking to them about their own, having them have foundation in the solutions that they're working with, has just made us in both sides better, because I think it allows the what we would call more our technology groups to be able to move on and work on new projects, whereas we don't have to be as concerned about day-to-day operations as much. I mean, I think it's important that technology still does that, but with some of these solutions, um, I feel like that's been, that kind of minimizes that effort, and we can actually focus on new things. And trust me, the demand that we get is pretty high already. It does that there's never a shortage for it. But one of the things with that I'm glad about the system development program is that we put a bit more structure in terms of setting expectations with folks on education. So the way we approached it was, we believe that like for business users, there's a set of business users who just want to get some foundational understanding of solutions, but then there's also a set of folks who really would like to get more mentorship or get more actually hands-on training. So what we did was we developed like think of it like a 4-step program where like if you go through this program, you can stop at any level of it. But step 1 is really just going through like core foundation training, where you get like an intro, this is the capabilities, and as you get more interested in this, as you go through step 2, 3, we start having subject matter experts that go out and actually working with them and say, hey, do you have a use case? Do you have something you want to build? And we give them we work with them on a real life project so that we could help them grow their skills. We rolled this out probably in early March, and we've gotten about like 200 some plus people already signed up at various degrees of it. What we really want to do is I really want to see if we could broaden this to the larger groups, like a variety of different user base across the board. Like I would want like the client service team members to learn. They want to learn something like a low code type of solution that they can grow their careers. Or if I can get analysts in some of our business areas to maybe learn RPA, and they can make their jobs a bit better. So measuring out like not just the number of people, but just the quality of the classes and what they're getting out is sort of what my hope is. And we just continue to reiterate on this program and change it so that we start seeing what's popular, what should we double down, where can we get partnerships from some of our vendors. But I think definitely the excitement of trying to get folks to really grow their technical savvy is a big passion of mine.
Fantastic. I wanted to close by asking you, Laksh, about the secrets of your path to the Chief Information Officer role. You took that on in the grand scheme of things relatively young. You've had quite a rise in your and a broad set of experiences of greater and greater levels of responsibility. What have been some of the difference makers on your journey to your current post?
I definitely have a lot to thank to the people I just work with in general, like my teams, my business partners. I really, I think the most important thing I try to tell myself is I need to listen and absorb. I've been in as I mentioned to you earlier, Peter, that like I did not start in media. So walking in, it's not like I just walked in with like a 10-step program for technology that everyone should follow. I found that being adaptable, especially with the nuanced business that I deal with, like on one hand, as I mentioned earlier, it's like when I'm dealing with a production team on one hand, but then when I'm dealing with the corporate office in the other, I think being adaptable and listening has been like just one of those large, like huge efforts for my growth. But I also have to say is like from my teams themselves, like you're never going to be all-knowing across technology. And I think one of the things that I found that like as I've surrounded myself with probably smarter people than me, is that like just learning from them and empowering those people to do what they're good at, and kind of removing as many barriers so that they can come up with creative solutions. They can support their team members. I think that's been like, I think as I've grown in my career, it's like I like the more and more people who report it into me, I still try to keep consistent with that, because it keeps you grounded. When people come to you, they feel, I want to make them feel empowered. I want them to feel excited about getting through it. So I have to say just the adaptability and learning have been like the two biggest things for me, as I've grown in my career.
Great thoughts. I appreciate those reflections, Laksh, and I appreciate more generally a great conversation covering a remarkable stretch of your career, now leading to this current post you have, the transformation that you've led during a very consequential time. Appreciate you sharing your perspectives with our audience here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me today. Grow their skills.